cute. Okay. Are you wearing socks or will they take too long to put on during your transition time?
Yes, I will be wearing socks. You're an idiot if you don't, in my opinion. For a full distance Ironman, comfort is more valuable than 20 seconds of speed savings. For a sprint triathlon, you might not, but we're doing a full.
Valid. Okay, you obviously spend a lot of time on the trails between all of your training. What do you say? Like you normally do like 20 hours a week? Okay, so what is the craziest thing you've seen on the trails during your training experience?
I don't know if I've seen anything that I would deem like crazy. I see lots of normal stuff. Cats eating a bird. I saw a cat playing with a mouse. It's like literally toying with it, like smacking it and let it kind of run away, and then would bite it and throw it in the air. That was pretty funny. Lots of deer. Nothing too crazy. Kind of a boring life in Utah County, I guess.
There were mountain lions roaming the area for a while.
I know.
I thought you would run into one of those. Okay, what is one thing that you learned from the half Ironman that you will be taking into the full? Because I feel like us spectators learned a lot on how to spectate an Ironman. But what did you learn on the athlete side?
I would definitely say I biked too hard in my half, and that made the run, as you'd imagine, quite difficult. So this one, we definitely have to watch the pace on the bike, because if you overcook your bike on a full Ironman, you're not going to be able to push yourself through the run. On a half, it's like, oh yeah, the last like 3 miles might suck. If you try to do that on a marathon, it's like the last 16 miles suck, and that's a whole different kind of suck. So definitely got to pace ourselves there. Outside of that, I think just knowing how the morning of kind of goes, the timeline of events, there's a lot of benefit to just knowing registration and how the transitions work and how much time you have in the morning. It was a lot more. I thought it'd be a little more frantic than it was, but thankfully Ironman does a good job of planning and making sure everything's paced really well, and you have time to get your feet under you and get your bearings. And lots of volunteers. We love the volunteers that point everywhere. Go over here. Go over here. Your bike's over here. They're the best. So it's good to know that it's organized.
I feel like you were just a bit anxious for your half marathon, like the night before in the morning of. Are like, did you learn anything that way that you can do different this time?
I don't know if there's anything I could do different per se. I mean, like I said, I think knowing what to expect more will help calm the nerves. Because like the night before, I'm like, I don't know if like I'm gonna, I'm like, do I have to set out? Do I have to set up my my run shoes and stuff in the morning? Do I have to hurry and do I wear my wetsuit when I leave the house? And so I was trying to figure out all this stuff, but now I know like have a lot of those questions answered, which is good. But you always have some pre-race jitters. If you don't, you probably don't care enough. So hopefully we can reasonable manner and get my bedtime better too. My bedtime's doing a lot better than it was. I'd go to bed at like 2 a.m. back when I did my half, but training for my full, I had to go to bed much earlier. So now my bedtime is closer to 11. So hopefully that sleep schedule will help.
If you had to start over, what would you implement into your training sooner?
Whew. That's a tough one.
Thanks for getting through our icebreaker ones.
I would maybe say don't know if I'd say that. I'd say zone 2 training, but I started that. So I started working out in July 23 and then started doing zone 2 in like December. So there was like 5 months where I wasn't really doing zone 2 training. But when you're first starting out, it's kind of really hard to do zone 2 training. So, and I was working out a much lower volume. I'd only work out like 3 times a week. So, something I would have implemented much sooner. I think some of the supplements I take make a big difference. Nutrition's always been important, but take a lot of ketones, which I think help a lot, even though they taste atrocious. My beet, I don't know, it's not even beet juice, beet sustenance in a pill, stuff that just I think it makes the little bit of difference add up when you do it day after day after day after day, hundreds of times. I think it helps, especially when you're compiling 10 to 14 days of back-to-back workouts. It's the recoveries that help more than the training almost some days.
What is the best advice you've gotten since starting?
Best advice. I feel like advice obviously comes from somebody else. I've like there's some TikToks and some quotes that I've heard, but advice that I've gotten straight from somebody else. I think I told you this. It's probably from Chad, Papa Chad, when he said like you can't put in the work and not see the results, because there are definitely days, weeks, months when I feel like putting in all this work and not seeing any progress and results, and it's so frustrating. And then, yeah, he said you can't put in the work and not see the results. So, as we were saying, there's been, when working out, I would say, yeah, I only feel good 2 to 5 times a month, and the other 20 to 25 days I feel like there's no progress, or I'm not as good as I was 2 weeks ago on a random Wednesday. Yeah. But if you just keep putting in that consistent work, the results will literally have to come.
Yeah. What advice would you give your day one self?
My day one self. That's a tough question, Abby.
Or like a message to them, or
I don't even
like the
know.
same best advice you got.
I don't know, because I've
different to what young old beginner Carson needed to hear.
I feel like I had, I don't know, like maybe the only thing I would say would just be, you can do it. Like you will do it. You'll get there. Because like, for the first years when I was running off and on in Kansas City, I was like, yeah, it'd be cool to do an Ironman. But it's like, could I? Do I have the time? Do I want to? So just like somehow conveying and committing to myself that like I will get there. Because outside of that, I feel like I had pretty good information, motivation from the get go. So yeah, I don't know. Like I take a lot of external motivation. James, our buddy Cowboy's the one who really got me triathlon committed, because we were sitting at the car meet, the Pivot Warehouse car meet our good buddy Josh Jackman put on, and he was watching the women's world finals last October in Kona, Hawaii. And, I'd started training. I just ran my first marathon like the week before. So I'd been training for like 3-4 months, mainly running. And I was like, hey, if I like crack down on triathlon training, I'm like, you think I'd finish in like the top 10, kind of joking. And then he kind of joking back was like, you won't even finish in like the top half of your age group. Like it's that competitive nowadays. And so that was just kind of the only real spark, I guess you could say, I needed. Was like, this guy who's like a professional triathlete doesn't think I can finish in the top half of my age group. If I start training now, I'm like, brother, you don't even know me. You'll see. So that, what's that MJ documentary? And he's like, I took that personally.
I can tell you took it
That's
personally.
that's how it went.
I love it. Obviously, this is a huge accomplishment for a multitude of reasons. As known in the community, a way people signify this accomplishment is they get the traditional Ironman tattoo. Are you getting an Ironman tattoo?
Ooh, we've talked about it. I'm tattoo-less currently, but I feel like this is a thing that is significant enough to be worthwhile. I've done a couple multi-year long adventures and challenges and stuff through business, but those aren't as fun to put on your body and talk about all the time. So maybe I don't like the traditional just logo. It feels too branding. And so I'm like, if there's a way to like make it kind of cool, and some people do that, and then some of it's kind of corny, but it's very personal, so you can be corny. So if I find something that I like, I'll probably do it, but I'm in no hurry. So we'll figure it out. Definitely, it's probably the highest probability of being my first tattoo, though.
So it's probably not going to be something like super spontaneous you get while you're there. Where would you get it?
You pass me my shoe.
Yeah, sorry.
You have to do it on the back of your calf, so that way when you pass people on the bike, they can see it and they know you're an Ironman athlete. It's a flex.
Oh, I didn't know that because like the Olympics, they put them all over, but it has to be on the calf. But then, if you're not doing the logo, does it still have to be on the calf?
It would be the logo, but there'd be some added something to it to make it a little more artsy or something.
Okay. Who's the guy who does the ultra in the deserts? And the 400. You sent me his Harvey. Haha, yes, Harvey. Harvey talks about developing an alter ego. Sometimes like he goes into like a state of mind where he is like animalistic, almost to a point of like hallucinating questionably. But do you think you will develop some sort of like alter ego? Are you channeling any type of animalistic energy in any sort of way to endure?
I don't think you can answer that question outside of the moment or without having done it multiple times, because you just never do know. I mean, I haven't as of late. I think both Chad and Dan can attest to back in my soccer days. There are some days when I would definitely play more animalistic than other days, and Dan would literally like shove me some days before the games. Like, you gotta get mad. Like, you gotta like get into it. Like, you play like significantly crazier when you do that. So who knows? Now I'm like a very emotionally well-rounded adult who is calm most of the time, wouldn't you say? My wife, yeah, she nods her head. So like,
but he still talks about like being calm,
and
he
that,
just like
and,
embodies
yeah,
this like
and that's what like Harvey's the most calm,
yeah,
great. I think he's a junior high school teacher. So I'm like, he's one of the most calm guys, and so there's definitely a side, and that's what I think. Sometimes that's why these kind of people chase that kind of thing, is to feel something, to let something out that maybe you wouldn't otherwise. So,
but I guess his like animalistic is more like in a spiritual route. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Because like it can be emotional.
It can be emotional. That's why I said I can't answer it in a perfectly calm state of normalcy. I would say, like doing my ultra when I ran 81 miles on my own, like there were times when I would get definitely emotional. I don't know if I'd say animalistic, But I think if you keep knocking on that door, something could come down and come out, and who knows. So especially when it's semi-competitive, not just running on a trail by myself for hours against myself, which is a different kind of experience. But so we'll see we'll see what comes out.
We'll get back to our fans on that one. Okay, I mean you kind of touched on this with like training in Kansas City and James and everything, but I from my point of view, I feel like you literally woke up one day and you're like, I'm going to do a full distance Ironman. And I was like, okay, and obviously here we are. But why did you decide to start and why did you decide to do a full distance Ironman? Like I feel like people are normally like, I'll start with a marathon at max. And you were just like, this has always been the end goal. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I mean that goes down a pretty deep journey of my life, the story, the people around. But it all started back in COVID when James, the Iron Cowboy, he wanted to add to his crazy resume, and he did 100 straight full distance triathlons, and that was absolutely crazy. And that was in the thick of it when we were doing Little Caesars. We'd opened up these stores, and during COVID, it was tough getting employees to work and government regulations. And it was like the hardest thing that I'd done in my life up to that point. And so it was cool to kind of go through that, with somebody else doing something so hard. And our dad, Chad, was heavily involved in it, biking 100 miles with James multiple times a week. And so I know that it was a big thing to help Chad kind of through that, because he was struggling, knowing that we were struggling in Kansas City, and he was struggling on his own with it as a business owner. So that was kind of an inspiration to, it'd be cool to do an Ironman. But then how it kind of got actually turned into reality, I would say it definitely wasn't, I didn't just sign up for an Ironman first thing. You've got to be smart about it to an extent, I guess you could say. So I would run off and on in Kansas City. It was tough with my work schedule, but the most I could get up to was a half marathon. And that was just the max I could do during that time. And then I would stop for months, years. And then out here, once we opened Houston's Hot Chicken, I put on 30 pounds of delicious fried chicken and sandwiches, but it was totally worth it. But decided you kind of get to a point where it's like, do I want to keep going this way, or am I going to correct and go this way? And you just kind of have to make a decision. So made the decision, got to get back into it. Just started running and was going well. And started in July, ran the marathon in October. So was that 3-4 months? It was a horrible marathon, absolutely awful. I think it was 5 hours and 10 minutes or something. And I think everyone who was there can attest, after mile 20, it was awful. But I mean, it was just a step, I ran a half marathon after a month or two, and then the full marathon. And then after the full marathon, I was like, all right, I ran the marathon. So I'm like, the next step's kind of an Ironman. So signed up for it. And like I referenced with the James conversation in October, and so I signed up for one that was about a year later, because I still understand it's a big undertaking, so you can't be delusional about how soon you're going to get there. So signed up down a year, and then kind of just said, all right, now I got to finish in the top half to beat James. He said I couldn't. And so looked up, what's the average finish time for people my age, my gender, and it was 11 and a half hours. I'm like, all right, cool. So then look up how much time you have to put in to finish in 11 and a half hours. And so did that for a month or two. And I was like, all right, what about like the, under 10 hours? How much time do those guys put in? Looked up that and then put in that work and just worked our way there in reasonable steps.
James is like a really big motivator.
I mean, it was kind of that one, like, well, I guess you could say two. It was him doing the 100 that made doing triathlon seemed cool, and then it was him
Telling you
saying,
you can't.
yeah, telling me that I can't in a semi-joking manner. He's still a good bud, but yeah, that was the spark. That was all I needed.
Right. Okay, one of the rules per Ironman. You cannot have any headphones or music, and that is a long 10 hours. Will you sing to yourself? Do you have a track playlist memorized?
I don't have a track playlist memorized. A lot of people, it's kind of funny. Like that's one of the few things I feel like I don't know, average people is almost a rude thing to say. Like normal people who aren't doing Ironmans hear about and ask about. They're like, how do you do it without music? But I mean, I do a handful of workouts without music just to get used to it, and it's like 95% of your thoughts are still the same. It's just like music will fill that 5 to 10% gap between thoughts. But other than that, it's the same.
Thinking about pace, nutrition.
Yeah, and especially during race, you're so focused. But I mean, there's like some, I don't know, like quotes or like inspirational kind of, and they're not songs, but things on my Spotify that I repeat to myself and kind of memorize to push through harder times. But I'm not singing full songs. Singing like I'll Make a Man Out of You from Mulan or something. No, Talon Savage would love me if I did that, and I know he probably does that.
He sings that on his own.
Absolutely.
Okay, I feel like when I tell people you're doing an Ironman, and especially for this being your first one, I just always preach how educated you've become. Like you are not just the person who just walks in and does an Ironman, like their first one being 11 and a half. I mean, that's average. That's probably not even people's first Ironmans, right?
Yeah, usually.
Yeah, so I feel like you've just become so educated with training, supplements, race day. Like how have you become so educated, and what do you feel like has been the most helpful in ways to educate yourself to train?
Ooh. Uh, I mean, when you have a year, 18 months to educate yourself, there's a lot you can learn, I would say. I would potentially. And I've always been the person where if I do something, I want to be like the best at it. Yeah. It's to a fault where it's like if I'm not the best, then I like stop doing it. And like that novice period is one that I've always struggled with. So maybe it's a bad thing how much I learn in such a short period of time, because people are like, you always, you have to be a rookie. And I agree, you do have to be a rookie. But I think with how this is structured almost, where it's like, if you're like a rookie in a video game, it's one thing where you can play it every day and you kind of like live through that rookie period. But when I had like a year to like be a rookie, but I'm not racing during that year because Ironmans are so expensive and take so much training, I had that whole year to learn and best prepare myself. And that's just who I am, is like I said, wanting to be the best. So it just, every night I would spend an hour or so in bed, just, all right, what are the best bikes? And I would screenshot Ironman posts of all like the professional athletes, and I would look like what's their hydration setup, how many of them have like a between the arm bottle, how many of them have disc wheels, and then like, all right, what is the best disc wheel, and what kind of between the bottles can I get on this bike, and what kind of training sessions are people doing. And then in today's world, the more invested you get, the more social media and the world's going to spit back at you. So then now my Instagram knows, now my TikTok knows, Facebook knows that, I'm a triathlete, I'm a runner, I'm a cyclist. They just send me all sorts of pages that, I follow that are educational, that have that kind of stuff, and implement as much as I can. I got, weightlifting coaches, like what are good running specific weightlifting routines, and what are the best race day fueling plans, and kind of just piece together this and that and try it and figure out what's best for me, and hopefully it works on race day.
Hopefully. What was the hardest day of training you've had? Physically, mentally, and weatherly.
All right, physically, I mean, physically and mentally, you could probably group together both in my ultra marathon day. Which, for anyone who doesn't know, since all these people, these viewers who I have no idea where this is going to, but anybody who doesn't know, I ran. So I started running July. It was like July 10th of 2023. So coming into July 2024, I kind of just decided, all right, my very first day running a year ago, I ran, I think it was like 2.5 miles at 11 minute and 11.5 minute pace. My heart rate was like 170. It was the hardest, I could do. That was like the hardest workout I could do. So I was like, what would be the hardest workout I could do a year later? So kind of on a 2 days notice, asked my wife how upset she would be or how much she could help if I decided to just run nonstop on the 4th of July. And as confused as she was, she agreed to help out. So set up some random coolers and stations across Utah County. And then at 3 o'clock in the morning, Abby came over to my house on July 4th and just started running. Abby dropped out after 22 miles, which was her farthest by a good chunk. So she did good that day. And then I kept going to 81. So it was I think it was 16 hours, 16 and a half of total running, and then like 18 some odd. So I took like 2 hours of breaks in there. But as you imagine, that was definitely the hardest physical workout. And then mentally too, I think that was the biggest benefit because physically it derailed my training plan massively. Boy, it set my running back so far. I was like, oh man, I could probably be like a 7-minute mile runner now. But I think mentally it was worth it because, oh man, there are so many days when I'll be like running on the trail now and I'm like, man, I'm doing intervals. I'm like, dude, I'm tired. I start like slow up and I'm like, bro, you're not even close to tired. Like, do your legs feel like they did when you did 81 miles? I'm like, not even close. All right, we can go another 30 seconds. Like, come on. So I think that's a training day that stands out. I think there's a lot of days where there's nothing like extreme, but it's just like those inconveniences of, I was literally getting ready to go and then I had like a work call and then so that derailed me for 30 minutes and then I go out and I get like a flat or something in 10 miles and I'm like, oh, crap. And then I fix that. And it's like, do I just head back? It's 4 o'clock. It's getting a little late. And then it's like, no, these are the days I think those are the days that'll separate the great athletes from the good ones. How many days are people like, yeah, I will go back. And those are the days because it's hard to separate yourself once you get into that top tier. Like everyone's super competitive. So it's going to make you that 1% better, I think is a big one. Alex Ramosi had a quote. I forget how it goes. It's like, if you can change your mind shift from like, oh, poor me, and shift it to, oh, poor everyone else who's going to have to fucking try. I don't know if I can say the F word on this podcast, but that's kind of one of my mantras where it's like, do the hard stuff. Like, people aren't going to be able to do that. People aren't going to be able to keep up. So the more hard stuff you do, the more likely you are to succeed.
That's like Goggins too. Like Goggins says that stuff all the time too, where he's like, it's 100 degrees. Why are you out here training? And he's like, because you're not. Like,
You're not.
Yeah. Okay, what about like weather? What's been the worst day?
I remember there was one day, I think it was April earlier this year. I rode my bike up Squaw Peak and it was just raining and kind of snow, it was like that.
Sleet.
Yeah, sleet. Because we'd gotten through most of winter, but it was still somewhat kind of wintry. So then it was raining, but it was just that wind turned into sleet. And oh my gosh, my hands were ruined. And so I made it back to like Willie's gas station at the mouth of the canyon, just like sat in there for like 20 minutes. And I think I texted you saying I might need a ride, but yet again, still finished. So That was a tough one. Um, there's been lots of it. I swam. I swam in our pool a lot at the apartment when it was snowing outside. Um, there's some hot days. We had probably like what, a month, 2 months straight of 95-degree heat where I had to get it done. Burned the top of my head when I first buzzed my head. Wore a visor without even thinking. I have to worry about my head now, and did like an 18-mile long run and absolutely charred the top of my head. That was a tough one. That was a tough one indeed. During the 81 miles, it was still like 85 degrees, I think.
Yeah.
And so we did the math, and I drank like 7 gallons of water. It was like 56 water bottles worth or something. So tons of hot days, tons of windy days. But again, you just kind of, once you just frame the right mindset, it's like, well, if it's windy, I just put the same amount of watts in either way. Doesn't matter. Go significantly faster one way than the other, but it's the same workout. So you just kind of get used to it, and might have to shift your workout to an earlier or later part of the day. But I hate riding my trainer downstairs, so it's kind of my own fault if I go out in bad weather.
What is like your hardest training when you look at your workout list and you're like, F my life. I have to do pyramid interval sprints, or like I'm going up Suncrest today, or like what is the one where you're like,
Oof.
obviously you do it. But.
Probably 1K intervals. Those are the worst. It's like for those Americans out there, 0.6 miles. So it takes you 3-4 minutes or so, but you're all out. You can make it those 3-4 minutes. So it's just like, oh, dude, those ones are tough, probably. And then you typically do 7 to 12 of them or something, and so it is a lot of misery. Those ones are probably the toughest. Bike ones, I enjoy the bike ones. Usually those are a bit shorter or longer. Swimming itself is no fun. All swimming workouts, those are rough. I do the masters swim classes at like 5 in the morning, so I have to get up out of bed, do that, and then oh yeah, we'll do all sorts of intervals there. And oh man, there's a kid there, Ty. That dude's a fish. And then sometimes get thrown in a lane with him, and I'm literally like dying, literally at my 100% sprint, and I'm literally getting lapped by him. And oh, dude, that's humbling. So that's not fun, but hopefully makes me a better swimmer.
Hopefully. How do you train mentally? Good old Iron Cowboy James says it's 100% mental and it's 100% physical. How do you train mental?
I think the only real way to do it is by doing the hard things. So, like I said, those days you don't want to go are kind of the days you have to go to make sure you just put in the consistent work and know that I think the more work that you can put in, the more confident you will be, which then equates to, mental toughness, where it's like, I've put in the work, I deserve to finish, with X time or finish it all. And because you've done that, you're more confident and can bust through any mental bully that comes in your head, is kind of one of the things he says, the mental bully. So I think doing the hard things, in all facets of life, I think, it's very transferable. If you do hard business things, you can do hard physical things. And if you do hard physical things, you can work through hard times, relationships, and so on. So keep going through the hard stuff. Makes you better.
What do you think about when pushing through those toughest moments?
Say just a variety of things. I think the more that you have to think about and inspire you and fall back on, the more you can pull from and the more you can get through. So there's there's quotes I think of, like the one I just said, the Alex Ramosi one. It's one I think about. Um, there's another one from, I think his name is like Simon Solik. I can't remember his last name, but he talks about like all you need is like like one person to believe in you, and you'll have the strength to do things you never thought possible. And so, I think about my beautiful wife and how supportive she's been. She has been uber supportive through this whole thing, even though I've been gone so much, and cooks me all the amazing dinners and is the best. And I think about Chad and how much he's pitched in and bought me the endless crap. And I would like go to pay for something, and someone's like, "Oh, your dad already paid for it." And I'm like, "What the freak?" And how much he's believed in me from day one. Think about Abby, and when she finishes her races, her heart rate's always higher than mine. So it means Abby wants it more than I do when she finishes races. She's get up to like 190s, and I can't even get up to like the 180s because Abby's a warrior. So I think about that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think about some of our other 10,000 hour quotes. Like I said, I've put in the time, so I know what I can do, and the more you've got to fall back on, the farther you can go. So it's a lot of it that I draw on.
Yeah, you have to. I feel like you've mentioned a couple quotes, but do you have a specific motto?
I think it kind of fluctuates depending on how close I am to race day, how competitive I'm getting. So yeah, currently it's the "Oh poor me" one. If you can shift from "Oh poor me" to "Oh poor everyone else who's gonna have to fucking try," that's my thing. Because boy, it's time. It's time to kick some ass, and oh poor everyone else is gonna try to keep up with this. And I've had multiple people. "Oh, you're doing Ironman. That's so cool. I've always wanted to do one. Like, where do I start?" I'm like, "Bro, get out and run."
Yeah.
I promise you. And then so far no one's even remotely gotten close to doing one. So that's one of them. I don't know if I have any other super big ones right now. One that got me through a lot of training was like talking about discipline. It's like everyone talks about discipline, how it's so important, but nobody like tells you why. Like the why discipline is so important. It's because it's the strongest form of self-love. It's putting what you want, tomorrow in the future more than what, in front of what you want right now. And so it's like when you're stacking hundreds of training days in a row, and it's so monotonous, and you're 6 months away from your event or 4 months, and it's like, oh, I can skip this workout, and I'd much rather go play pickleball. The amount of pickleball events that I miss with my friends, and the amount of late nights and all sort of stuff that I've missed for what I want in the future. I think it should hopefully come to pay off now. Yeah. So discipline is important, and that got me through a lot of training.
I like that. I don't think I've heard that one. And yeah, also pour them because I wouldn't want to be them. So, not up against you. Um, what has been the most rewarding part of all of this and all of your training thus far? Thus, not being an Ironmaner yet.
Yeah, thus far. Hopefully, I get to be an Ironman. That's a cool and proud accomplishment. Most rewarding part. I mean, I just think, yeah, the characteristics and skill set you learn doing this. I mean, that's what I'd say. Like, oh gosh, if I put, an Ironman athlete on my resume, like I'd carry that way more than some, random certificate. A college degree is something that is also, worthwhile. It means you put in 4 years of consistent effort. So, but I mean, yeah, like if you've done an Ironman, like that shows you've got tons of discipline. You've got your own work ethic. You're self motivated. You've got control. You're on the right diet. So um, I think that's big. Speaking of diets, I think hopefully that's one thing that's been really rewarding. It's sad because now I don't eat a lot of the food I used to and love, and it's super addictive. But hopefully, it's rewarding in the long term. Where when I'm 40, 50, 60, 70, I'm not going to have dementia or some sort of cancer from eating all these dyes and stuff. So I learned a lot about food and gut health during this. And now Chase and I are much better eaters and cookers, and hopefully we're going to live a long, prosperous life, right, babe?
I feel like you kind of already did this, but who would you like to shout out? We've kind of talked about Chase, Dad, me, James, anyone else? I feel like you kind of touched on that.
Oof. Who would I like to shout out? Yeah, those are some big ones. Those are direct ones. Obviously, my mom's the best. She's the kindest, most loving little mom who always supports and comes to all the events and is inspirational and believes in me. um, yeah, the other ones have already kind of been mentioned. Those are the big ones, I would say. Uh, there's like people I follow on Strava. Like there's a can't remember his name. It's Blake something. Sorry, Blake. We're Strava buddies. He's another Utah County guy. When I first started, and I was like a couple months into the triathlon training, I'd like go look at my segment times and saw this dude was beating me, and it's like, dang, he's pretty fast. And I looked him up, and I'm like, oh, he's a triathlete. I'm like, oh, and the dude's legit. So followed him on Strava, and I kind of only follow people on Strava who are better than me to inspire me, and it's probably not healthy, but compare myself to those guys because I'm like, boy,
Well, I'm on
if
there. So.
I know, I'm like, if you can, if all you see,
to make you feel better.
I know, right? If the only thing you see are times better than yours, or guys stacking workouts like crazy, then that'll either inspire you or demoralize you, and I often use it as inspiration. So thanks, Blake, for that. Who else? I don't know. I feel like Brian, Ty Fox, those guys. Taught me a great work ethic when I was growing up. Came out and supported at the St. George half Ironman I did. Love those guys. Yeah. A lot of my buddies, they're great. Just understanding of me ditching out on a lot of their stuff and make fun of me for calling it a night at 9 o'clock, but understand and still remain my friend. So that's good.
Okay, we're almost done. We have like 3 more.
Oh, and Graminay. She's a legend. She doesn't really she doesn't comment about my racing and stuff. She says, you just be careful out there. But we all know that I'm her favorite, and she inspires us every day by her perseverance and on her way to live to be 100. She's going to be 100, right, Grandma?
Grandma knows it's a crazy world out there. She wants you to be careful. Okay. Will you shave your entire body in order to save time?
No, there's no purpose in shaving your entire body. A lot of it's covered by a suit that goes down to your elbow and almost to your knee. So my legs are shaven, that's for sure. Look at that, silky smooth. I'll probably keep my arms. I think I'll keep the hair on there. I could maybe look up, see if it's worth it. I think it might save me like 1 or 2 watts. But I honestly am wondering if it's also protecting me from like sunburn. So it might be too risky to shave off my hair and get sunburned, because that would absolutely derail my race, compared to saving 1 or 2 watts won't derail my race. And then I was going to shave my chest hair, but my wife said no. So that one's staying. My head's already kind of shaved. So.
But what about like your face? You got a lot of facial hair.
Oof, my face, I'll probably shave. Wife says no, but I probably will. I shave it once a month anyway, so might as well just do it on race day. See if it saves me a watt or two.
Okay. what's next? What's the next goal? And Ironman is a huge accomplishment. Are you just gonna keep going for time? Are we looking at an ultra? Are we looking at an Olympic weightlifter? Do you have something you're gonna do something completely new?
I'm never gonna be a weightlifter. Gosh, I hate Vasa, dude. It's crowded as all get out. So crowded. Like, even if the people there aren't tools, I believe most of them aren't. But it's like some people are just like, oh, I don't want to be a weightlifter. They're all tools. I don't think they are. I just hate how crowded the gym is. Like on this, I can just go on the trail and be by myself for hours, which is so nice. So I would say I want to qualify for the world championship, whether that's this year, next year, whenever. This year's going to be tough. So I think next year we can make it a for sure goal. So I've already been talking to a couple coaches. We'll see if I get on with someone who's legit. Go sub 9 hours next year in a full distance Ironman.
Where would you want to compete next year?
I already signed up for the half in St. George. I have a bone to pick with that one. I wanted to go under 5 hours there, and I did 5:14. So we have to do that one again. And I think I'm going to blow that one out of the water. I'm going to go freaking low fours, at least mid fours, I think, actually. But I don't have another full picked out yet. You have to look and see where they are and what time. So I'll probably do another full or two next year. I really want to run 100 miles. So whether that's on my own or an official ultra, we'll see. Like I said, that really derailed my training last year. So I kind of have to be careful with it. But I think I'll hopefully obviously be in better shape. And I think if I plan more than a few days out, I can hopefully just up some running for a couple months and have my body much better prepared for it this time. So I'll probably do a 100-miler in the next few years, year or two. And then we'll see. We'll see what family life holds and how my body holds up. But I think those backyard ultras would be fun. See how far I could go without any finish line officially declared. That's a fun event. Moab 240, that's in my backyard. I feel like I could maybe go represent Utah there. That one's a crazy one. UMB, the race in Europe where they go over 3 mountain peaks. That one sounds dope as shiz. So it's a whole different style of training though. So we'll see how far I go in the triathlon hole. Because yeah, I for sure want to go to the world championships and then try, but then I also want to like legitimately qualify because there's like the roll down slots you can get where it's like you weren't in like the top 5 or top 8 of your age group, whatever the allocation is for that race, but you know the top 4 of the top 8 guys didn't want it, so then they go to the next 4 and you can get it that way. So if I got it that way, I'd take it for my first one, but after my first one I would want to rightfully qualify at a future event. So hopefully we can do that next year, because if I do it next year, then the year after that the race is in Kona, Hawaii. That's cool. It's where the legends play.
I'm down for Hawaii. Okay, last. What message do you want to tell your future self? Talked about the past, present. What do you want to say to the future guy?
Give me what would you tell your future self? There's
well,
not very
like
many things I would ever tell my future self.
Well, like, well, that's exactly the question. Is we want to know what you would say, whether that's like on race day. What do you want to like tell yourself now to do or to remember to accomplish, or like whether that's a message like I hope I can do this now, like something you want to see or expect of your future self. Does that make sense?
No.
Yes, it does.
This is not. This is a question. Like I don't know what. I want to bring it to the general public. Ask chat. What would they tell their future self? Because I don't know what my future self needs to hear. I don't know what my future self is going through. Past self, I do, But
exactly, that's where the troublesome comes in. The deep
future
thinking
self.
mentality. Like, is it something you want to do on race day? Is it something
I don't know. Make
you
sure
wanna be
you nail
proud
your
of, or
nutrition. Because it's hard to nail your nutrition sometimes when you get in the moment. Just forget or don't feel like eating, but you definitely should. That's what I tell myself on race day. Put in the work. The only thing you could mess up now is your nutrition. Outside of that, I would just say, keep doing things today that tomorrow you'd be thankful for. It's the biggest thing you do. Just keep stacking one day at a time. So there are many days where I'm like that. It's like, I don't really want to work out today. And I'm like, what would I be saying to myself tomorrow? Like, if I didn't work out today, how disappointed would I be tomorrow? Looking back, I'm like, I could have, I should have, but I never want to be that guy. So keep grinding day after day.
that's all we have. Like and subscribe. Any other final thoughts or final words for our audience? We don't even know who they are.
Specialized. Sponsor me. It's a good microphone. Who knew that your shoe would be such a good microphone? Other than that, no. Thanks everyone for the support. My family, my wife, my sister, my parents. So see you on race day, and let's get this animal. What did we say? The spirit animal out, and
yeah.
poor everyone else who's gonna have to fucking try.